So is Osgood Perkins' new film a keeper, or does he need to slow down? What is up, guys, and welcome to my review of Keeper. This is the new film by director Osgood Perkins, one of the more prominent rising voices in horror, and like his third film in like a year and a half. Dude's fucking working. And he's already got another film slated for release next year. So Keeper is this very surrealist type of horror film where you get this couple that go off on this little anniversary trip to the secluded cabin, and when the man has to go back to the city for work for a period of time, the woman played by Tatiana Maslany starts to have a little bit of a mental breakdown, starts to have a bit of a psychological, psychedelic type experience, and you feel very much that something is absolutely wrong about this cabin and the situation, and it's about finding out what exactly that is. Now, as I said before, Osgood Perkins is definitely one of the more prominent rising voices in horror, and he's somebody that has a very interesting style about him that I'm very curious about. You know, he's so far a little bit mixed for me. Like, you have things like Blackcoat's Daughter that I thought was very well made, but a bit of a slog to get through. You have the opposite extreme with Longlegs, which I really enjoyed. And then you have things like earlier this year with The Monkey, where I highly enjoyed the first half and felt a little bit disappointed by the second half. So he's a guy that when his name is on the poster, when he is the one bringing us this story, I'm immediately buying a ticket. I'm there day one. But I really don't know if it's going to be for me or not. And sometimes that's exciting. Sometimes it's cool to not walk in knowing for sure I'm going to like this, and you're rolling the dice a little bit. There's a little danger with your Osgood Perkins viewing experience. So I checked out this movie last night in a double feature. Started with The Running Man, which I was highly anticipating. That review should already be out. If not, it's coming out tomorrow. And then followed it up with Keeper, which I walked into 100% blind. I knew Osgood Perkins directed it. I knew Tatiana Maslany was the lead. And beyond that, had no clue what I was in store for. Checked out the film and walked out, and yeah, it's a no from me, dog. Starting off with the positives, Osgood Perkins is a very talented director. He's got a very interesting style about him, and he's got a lot of variety to him too. Just look at the last 3 films that he's done. Longlegs was something that was very much inspired by things like Silence of the Lambs, and was going for a bit of that 90s serial killer thriller that had a much more demonic twist to it. And then you had things like The Monkey, which was very much like this absolute gore fest horror comedy. Even Blackcoat's Daughter, something that is very much one of these heady, slow burn type films. And keeping up with that with Keeper, a movie that's very surrealist, very psychedelic, and has a lot of running commentary, something that's definitely like a message first type film, I feel. You never really know what you're going to get from Osgood, and I still think that's exciting. But even the way that he approaches this story in this movie, you have some of those signature Osgood elements. You have some of the way that he crafts scares and executes scares that you can start to pinpoint at this point in his career. But also he shows some different flavors. You know, the way that he transitions in certain images and starts to go for that more psychedelic vibe where you're really confused along with the main character about what exactly is going on, what is real, what is maybe an image or some kind of a bad trip. And the way that he brings all that together, I think, is a very solid job as a director, executing this story in his way that he sees in his vision. As the lead, I think Tatiana Maslany is great here. Now, I have seen her be better in other things. I'm not going to go to the point of saying this is the best I've ever seen her, but she's one of those actresses that you just know she's going to be good. And 90% of the movie is on her shoulders. Like, most of the screen time is her walking around by herself in this cabin, or walking around outside, or kind of tripping about certain things. And I think she does a really good job, and only gets better as the movie goes along. As things get more sinister, more weird, more grim, I think she sells it the more and more that starts to get ramped up. And I don't want to say too much about where things head, because I don't know what was in the marketing, what they already teased, and I certainly don't want to ruin anything for you, but there are elements of the film that starts to show its head as the film goes on. And I think that there is some very unique and creative visuals along with that. I know that's a very vague statement, but if you see the film, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. The way that he brings certain things to life, there's definitely a uniqueness there that I appreciate. If we're going to have that type of horror film, if we're going to go that route, we've seen many different versions of that. So what are you going to bring new to it? They bring something new to it, for better or worse. And the last thing that I'll say here is that this is a movie that, despite the fact that I did not enjoy it, I'm sure there's a lot of other people, maybe people who are even more of dedicated Osgood fans and liked everything that he's done at this point, that are going to love it. And it's a film that I do think would be interesting to discuss. Sometimes you see movies like this that, lean on pretension a little bit, and immediately it's like a turnoff. It's like, I don't even want to be a part of the discourse because I know how ridiculous and toxic and miserable it's going to be. I don't imagine that's going to be the case with Keeper. I think people are going to be very grounded and understanding about how divisive this is going to end up being. And so it's a movie that there's a lot to unpack here, and I think I would enjoy and be interested in unpacking it with others. Hopefully a lot of you down in the comment section if you did really enjoy it. But moving on to the negatives, this was just absolutely not my thing. This might be my least favorite thing that I've seen from Osgood so far. Black Coat's Daughter was previously that film, and it was mostly because of how slow and how much of a slog it is to get through. But I think that movie is infinitely more coherent than this movie. This movie is just as slow, just as deliberately slow burn, and I would also use the word a slog to get through as Black Coat's Daughter, but it doesn't make any sense by the end of it. So I don't really feel near as much satisfaction as I do with the conclusion of Black Coat's Daughter. This was a movie that really tested my patience. It was a movie that I just found myself struggling to not pick up my phone and look at how much time was left in the runtime. And then ultimately, when we get our conclusions and our answers and where things are revealed in the third act, it didn't satisfy me. It didn't reward that patience or that journey. It just left me confused as well as impatient. This was a film that was created while the production of The Monkey was on hold during a lot of the SAG-AFTRA strikes, is what I read. And because he uses mostly Canadian actors here, maybe entirely Canadian actors, there was a way that he was able to keep some of the people that he had on staff for The Monkey in business, keep them working on this other movie. And so when I read that story, it's interesting, but it also gives the air of this was crafted very quickly with a time crunch just to give some people something to do. And I think that shows in the writing. I think that this is a movie that, Osgood did not write this. He commissions a Canadian writer to do this. And I feel like the writing is where this movie is entirely let down. I think that there is so much here that is so heavily reliant on metaphors and commentary and allegories and subtext that's all the movie really has to offer, and all of those things don't even really come together in a way that I think is very profound or even coherent to the point where I can walk away appreciating that. Like, this movie to me feels like it leans on some of the worst sensibilities of somebody like Jordan Peele, who's another director who I really enjoy and really respect, but also don't quite know what I'm going to get when I walk into it, for better or worse. And the biggest thing that frustrates me about Jordan Peele's movies that don't work for me is I feel like that same thing, where his metaphors and the message overtakes just the surface level storyline, and he forgets to make all of that make sense. And Keeper is the exact same way. Nothing in this movie makes any sense. They don't bother to explain any of it, and the things that they try to explain just leaves you more perplexed. And I don't enjoy that. I don't have a problem with ambiguity. I don't have a problem with having to fill in some gaps myself or leaving things to your imagination. Sometimes that's the right answer to do, but you have to make some of it make some kind of sense. You have to establish some kind of inner logic in your movie, some kind of lore, some kind of rules that we have as like a baseline for our understanding of this version of reality, for us to be able to build those building blocks of reaching the answers for the other things. This movie has none of that. Everything that they introduce is just like, here's our answer, figure it the fuck out. There's even a line of dialogue from one of the characters where he's like, yeah, I mean, that's what happens. Don't ask any questions why. Like, I'm paraphrasing, but that felt like him talking to the audience like, please don't ask questions because we don't have any answers for you. We don't think it makes sense either. And so literally every distinct plot point in this film is left as this humongous question mark where I don't understand any of it. And it's not that I don't understand the metaphor that they're going for. It's not that I don't understand where this ties into the ultimate message of the movie. That's pretty obvious. Like, if you walk away from this not understanding what this movie's about, I think you've never seen a movie like this before, and I kind of understand that. But this is a film where you have to have some sort of logic with your rules that you're establishing of what exactly is making these characters do the things that they're doing and how we're getting to these ultimate places in the third act. And I never felt like anything was done in that regard with Keeper. And the added frustration and disappointment is, even if you can forgive that, or even if you appreciate movies in a way that I don't, where you like more of the underlying message and the subtext more than just the surface level story, and it's not an issue for you if it doesn't all quite make sense, the actual message and the subtext and the theme that the movie is going for, one is something that is one of the more prevalent, overdone themes in horror right now. Like, the main one is trauma. Trauma's the one that I think pretty much everybody has agreed, like, we're tired of that, like, enough with trauma being the main element of these characters. But this one is definitely the runner-up. I'm not going to say specifically what it is because I feel like it leans in spoilers, but, you know, it's something where as soon as it starts to show its head, it's like, okay, another one of these movies. I hope you have something truly unique and insightful to say on this subject. And I just didn't feel like they did. I feel like I've seen other movies tackle it in almost the exact same way that was more entertaining, more insightful, and more meaningful to me personally. The other side of it that was a frustration is that it really shows its head extremely early in the film. Like, there's 3 core reveals all wrapped up in the third act of what exactly is going on here in Keeper. And I feel like 2 of those 3 are blatantly obvious and telegraphed entirely by the opening montage of the film. Like, before I even saw a single scene with Tatiana Maslany, I knew exactly where they were going to be heading in the story and what the ultimate issue was going to be that she has to overcome. And it was disappointing to be proven right. I hate that. I hate when a movie shows its head so soon, yet tries to act clever like it's some kind of a cool twist or a surprise, and it just sucks all of the air out of the room. And even if there was something interesting about what they were saying, when a movie is this slow and is this deliberately slow burn with a little bit of details that it's giving you in nuggets, if it's ultimately leading to something that was clear from the beginning, it just makes that journey all the more frustrating. And finally, one of the main things that really turned me off to this film, even before it started to really wear on my patience, is that while this is a movie that's going for some of those surreal vibes, which always kind of distort how our normal understanding of reality is, I didn't feel like anybody in this movie acted like an actual human. And to me, that takes away a lot of my investment and a lot of my interest in what is going on, because I just can't get on board with what is happening. Like, there's things that Tatiana Maslany does where I'm like, I don't understand why she would do that. No human person with a fucking nugget of common sense would do that. Why is she not asking more questions? Why is she not feeling more off about the situation when from Jump Street I'm like, this is fucked up, get out? Like, this isn't a spoiler. This is something that happens very early on and you have no idea exactly how it's going to come into play by me describing it. But there's a scene early on where they're getting ready to fuck in the kitchen. Like, they're all flirty towards each other and they're being all seductive and they're starting to take clothes off and they're getting hot and heavy. And then her significant other's like, stop before we fuck. Have this piece of cake. And her first response is that, hey, I don't like chocolate. And it's a chocolate cake. Why would I eat that cake? But there's so many other questions. Like, he insists that she eats this cake. He doesn't cut a piece for himself. And he stopped dead in the middle of foreplay to make sure that she has this dessert. Like, everything about this is wrong. And this happens in the first 15 minutes of the movie. And at no point does she ask, why are we stopping to have cake? Why, after I told you I don't eat chocolate, are you insisting I eat this chocolate cake? And why the fuck didn't you cut yourself a piece? This is weird, bro. There's so many moments like that throughout the film that just, it breaks everything for me, where I cannot go along with this. Whoever wrote this, it's like they've never interacted with a human before. There's some movies that can get away with that. This is not one of them. So unfortunately, we're left with a movie that I do think continues to show the variety and the level of talent that Osgood Perkins has as a filmmaker, that he can tackle many different styles of horror. He can go for many different tones and give you something interesting, give you something unique, especially in the amount of time that it takes him to make a movie. I mean, in less than 2 years, likely, we're going to have 4 Osgood Perkins films. That's pretty wild. But I do think that this is a sign that he maybe needs to pump the brakes a little bit, focus more on developing really good scripts, either himself or with a screenwriter, and really tackling a movie with his best foot forward rather than just trying to crank out quantity. Because this is one where it might be my least favorite film of his. If not, it's a very close runner-up, but I did not enjoy myself. It tested my patience beyond belief. All of the ways that it should have rewarded me for that journey, by the end of it, it just ended up frustrating me and confusing me. And by the end, I'm left with a film that is definitely weird, definitely unique, has moments that it stands out, but overall is an experience that was frustrating, confusing, and off-putting. So if you're a massive fan of Osgood Perkins, especially if you have loved the majority of his films so far, I would say definitely go see this. You're probably going to be on the side that enjoys it much more than me. If you're somebody who has liked some and disliked some, maybe roll the dice on this after it goes to streaming, but this is one that I think is going to be way more divisive than any of his most recent films, and unfortunately, it's not one that I personally can recommend to a lot of people if they have similar taste as me. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for all of my 2025 new release reviews. I'm also going to put my review of The Monkey, the previous Osgood Perkins films, up here for you to check out. Like, share, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future, which is probably going to have 4 or 5 more Osgood Perkins films in the near future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.